Howdy, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Robert Shelton, and I'm joined today by Moses Castro and David Chacko. We're seminarians for the Archdiocese of San Antonio, and we're really excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking about human formation. What is human formation? Well, seminarians don't grow off trees. We aren't cloned in a lab. We're not, abducted. We come from families where normal people. And normal people, right, like anyone else, we got to learn, we got to develop, we have weaknesses, we have strengths, we have gifts, we have maybe vices in our life that, don't make us a perfect person. And so in seminary, one of the critical aspects of the pillars of formation, which are four, what we've discussed in some of our other videos, is, intellectual, spiritual, pastoral, and human. And human formation really is kind of the bedrock about from which all the others come from. And I think David had a really good quote we were talking before we started. I think that really kind of encapsulated the importance of human formation and what it is.
Yeah, one of the things we hear a lot in formation is that, yes, we want to become priests of Jesus Christ. That's at least what we're discerning, right. And that's, for many of us, that's the goal. But before we become priests, we have to be disciples of Jesus. And before you can be a disciple of Jesus, you have to be a human being. In our case, we have to be men, Christian men, right. So men of virtue, men who know what it means to live with others, live in community, know how to be a man of sharing, a man of care and patience. Mm-hmm. So all those things are things we have to develop. We have good habits and maybe not so good habits from our upbringings. And so all of these things are important. And so that's why human formation is the foundational pillar from which all other aspects of our formation need to build off of. Grace builds on nature. So you got to start from the ground up.
Right, absolutely. And both of y'all touched on this just a little bit, but this idea of where we came from, our family of origin, and how that has impacted us in our character and our virtues. And so we're not yet ready to be priests of Jesus Christ. We're not yet ready to be ministers. And so the seminary provides that opportunity for us to grow in that area of human development and the pillar of human formation. And so it's an opportunity for all of us as a fraternity of brothers who are aspiring to be priests to work together collectively with our formation advisors and our spiritual directors and all the supports that are available to us at the seminary to help us grow as men in virtue. And helping even to identify what are those areas, Robert, you mentioned this earlier, like our weaknesses, our vices, our strengths, like being able to grow in our own self-awareness about who we are and the way the Lord's gifted us with charisms, but then also the areas in which we need some support and help that we may not have seen earlier in our lives, but today we have that opportunity to really dig in deep, right? To look at that, yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said really summarizes what human formation is in the seminary. So when you enter seminary, that's really one of the key things that's always stressed, and things like, it's just building virtues, building good habits, things like discipline, being able to get up in the morning, be able to do your work on time, be able to dress appropriately. It's simple things like that, but it can also be bigger things such as how you interact with people, how you behave, how you hold yourself in public, things like that. And then those cross over into your pastoral lens. And so what is, the seminary, what do they do for human formation? Is it like boot camp where you just come in? David went to West Point, so is it like boot camp where you come in and it's da 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 da, or is it more experience based? What are y'all's insights on how human formation is done in the seminary?
Well, that's a great point, because I do get to kind of experience and compare my experience at West Point versus at seminary. And it's very different in some ways, but in other ways it's similar. No, we're not doing boot camp exercises and like kind of breaking you down to build up a whole new identity.
Right.
But at the same time, we are growing a lot, like Moses mentioned, in self-awareness. I think, honestly, I've grown more in self-awareness here in seminary than I did at West Point, because the West Point focus was just more on creating an identity, whereas this one is, who am I? Who am I as a person? Who am I as a disciple of Jesus, as a beloved child of the Father? And so I've really grown in self-awareness. And I think part of that is one of the things we have to do, all of us, is we're assigned a formation advisor. And every 3 weeks or even more often, we meet with our formation advisor. And one of them talked about how really a lot of this is learning how to receive feedback and also eventually give feedback, but also to receive feedback. There's going to be people, other formators, priests, sisters, laymen and women that are at the seminary that are evaluating us, that are watching us, and learning how to understand their feedback and receive it in a constructive way. Not to just push back always, but to understand that, hey, they're trying to help me grow as a person. They're trying to help me grow in virtue.
Right. Right, which is the whole point of seminary formation, right? We're here to be formed. There was one of our formators mentioned in the past, he relates seminary to like a laboratory where we go in and we're worked on, which that kind of image is like kind of striking to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. That seems like very daunting and painful even, right, we could say. David, you mentioned something about our identity, and I think before I entered seminary formation, I was in a career for a number of years, and I adopted that as my identity. I'm a professional. I work in this field. This is my title. This is how people view me, and this is my responsibility. But in entering seminary formation, I had to adopt and grow an awareness of my identity as a son of the Father, and start at that foundational level, that level of I am loved, right? And then from there, building up. I have vices. I have tendencies that don't rub people the wrong way, right? Don't we all? But with that awareness, I know, okay, I am a son of the Father. I am loved, and I'm seeking then to grow as a man of God, as a minister of the church. And so not being so sensitive to feedback, right? Because then recognizing, okay, it's not an attack on me. It's an opportunity for me to grow and to be a better minister, which is the goal of formation, right? So for me, as I entered seminary, there was a shift in identity of understanding at the fundamental level of who I am and why I'm here, and how that seminary formation is all geared toward that growth of self-awareness and my identity as a son of the Father. Yeah.
And I think one thing that helps me kind of reflect on with Scripture is Jesus. You know, he spent a lot of time what we call the hidden life, his hidden life.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't out in public.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's similar to what we're doing in seminary. Yes, we have some public interaction, but a lot of it we're here and we're just growing. As it said Jesus did, he grew in wisdom, age, grace, and favor before God and man.
Right.
I kind of think that's what we're doing. We're developing, we're growing in wisdom. We're growing in all those virtues that we need.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think growing in, both of y'all mentioned growth repeatedly, and I think that's really the key thing. There is no, A to B to Z plan for human formation. It's not, all right, you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to become a priest.
Right.
It really is that we're all individuals. We're all unique human persons, again, with our own background, our own history, our own failings, our own gifts. And it's just about identifying that. Self-awareness is so key. I would agree with you. I mean, since I've been in seminary, I didn't necessarily have a career, but I worked for a few years. I went to school, and I was just kind of floating in the wind, didn't really know who I was. And then getting to seminary, and that kind of gets pressed: is who are you? What are your sometimes the focus is on what are your faults versus what are your virtues. But it's good because if you're able to identify your weakness, you're able to identify your strengths. When I studied history, that was a key thing. If you, I think it was even Sun Tzu or someone's like, know yourself, know your, these kind of ideas, and that's really what seminary is about, and that's what virtue's about, developing in virtue. It's just identifying good habits and making good behaviors. And seminary really provides that opportunity, not just because of the program. We get, for instance, in seminary, you have Friday formation conferences, which can touch on any of the four pillars, but a lot of times it's focused on human formation, things like workshops on, etiquette, workshops on, even sexuality things, workshops on, conflict resolutions, all that kind of stuff. And you get things in class too, but one of the key ones is also, self-awareness. And where you get a lot of that from, and a lot of those good experiences and growth is actually from your peers, from your brothers around you. Because you mentioned like the hidden life, right? So formation, going to class and going to conferences and meeting your formators is such a small portion of human human formation in the seminary. Because seminary, you're also not in seminary all the time. You're in summer, you're in programs, you might be in a parish, you might be like, you're going to Mexico this summer, David's going to be in a parish, I'll be doing CP. There's so many other experiences that mold you, but I think one of the most constant ones is your peers around you, and they help you develop that. So I think we're kind of touching around it. But maybe y'all could share some insight onto that, like, peer-to-peer correction or fraternal correction. How does that help develop human formation?
Yeah, definitely. So like we mentioned, there's some of those formal structures like formation conferences, formation advising, but a lot of the actual meat of human formation happens in these informal structures. Like, and I've grown so much through just having conversations with other guys as a group, maybe at the dinner table or while we're commuting, but also one-on-one. I know Moses here has really helped me grow as a person, challenging me on things that I find to be like sticking points, like, oh no, this should be changed. I think this could be better. And then Moses is like, well, that was the past. Let's focus on now. Like, and it's like, David, you got to live in the present. And I've been really grateful for those kinds of interactions, and that's helped me grow in maturity, grow in. But we've had some talks on affective maturity or emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. Living it in the light of Christ, but really I think when we get those peer interactions, it really concretizes it for me, and it's like, okay, wow, this is a real way I can put this lesson into action.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. For me, one thing that I've seen is, I'll be honest, I get annoyed really easily, and so I get annoyed by the guys in the seminary naturally, and so on occasion, I'm not. But this idea of like, okay, Moses, why is it that when you see something, it becomes annoying? You know, why do you get frustrated by it? Why are you so annoyed by it? What is the common denominator here? It tends to be me, right? When I see some sort of situation that I'm bothered by or frustrated by, and so the community environment, living in a household full of men, then there's this opportunity for me to always self-reflect. Like, where is this coming from? Is it actually my brother seminarians that are triggering this, or is it something internally within myself that I'm working through? And where do I need to go to like really understand that better? Supports of a formation advisor, spiritual director, counseling even is an opportunity here within the seminary formation, because the human element is so incredibly important. And if I'm finding then within the seminary environment that there's this tendency that I have to be frustrated or annoyed, that's not going to stop here within these four walls. I'm going to take that out to the parish. If the Lord desires ordination from me, I'll take that to the parish with the faithful, the parishioners. Right. They don't deserve that if it's something internal within myself, that it's drawing that out, right? And so I think the seminary environment, living in community, allows us really to iron sharpens iron, or confront the non-ego, right? The others around us who then we learn more about ourselves simply by engaging with others in community. And so being forced to live in community, having classes together, praying together, eating meals together, really allows, I think, each man to really face things that they might be processing and growing through, that may be brought from their childhood or other experiences in life. But that real identity to explore, okay, why do I have this struggle? Where is this tendency coming from? And the supports, again, that the seminary provides us are really helpful, and that's what it's geared toward. And so we talk about helping one another grow, but I think just by being in a group of other people, you automatically start to grow in your own self-awareness, a word we've used before. And so for me, I think that's been the biggest part. And again, just being frank and honest, I get annoyed. And so I need to sit with that. I need to reflect on why is this annoying me so much, and how do I process through it? How do I recover from that kind of thing? Yeah.
No, absolutely. I agree with 100% with what you said. Not that you get annoyed by people. I'm probably the source of a lot of that. But you're very true about iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. I mean, each one of us, again, comes from our own background, our own history. And so we each have our own thing to offer. And so, like I was raised in a military household. I know David, a military household, and we went to West Point. And so, we have sometimes a different perspective than guys who don't come from kind of, having a family military background or whatnot. And so I think that's the great benefit of seminary. Again, you've worked, we've all, actually, interestingly enough, we've all had lives outside of seminary. Sure. And the interesting thing is when you're in the world, people are nice, and they're not going to say things. They're not going to be like, man, you're kind of an a-hole, or whatnot. And so, but seminary, and it's not like, 24/7 you're being, evaluated and critiqued, and people are just chomping at the bit. It's all done what we like to call fraternal correction. It means like we are, especially God willing, we're all ordained, where you're in the brotherhood of Christ. We're in, brothers in priestly ministry. We're all each other kind of has. And so we are like brothers, like family, and families can be honest with each other and can correct. And it doesn't mean like every minute of every day they're looking for something to say, but it is good because it means something, right? Like experience, kind of funny story. The diocese during the summer will send, the Archdiocese of San Antonio will send guys, typically to parishes after their first year of seminary.
Right.
Or second year, I'm sorry. And start sending guys to parishes, and you live in a parish, you live with the priest, and you're just there for the whole summer, just doing whatever, they need help with. And I remember one of the parish I was at, the priest, at the end of the summer, like, sat me down. He just starts off the conversation. He's like, "You're going to think I'm an a-hole after this conversation, but you need to hear it." And, he just laid out a lot of good things. And, me being young, I think I was like 22 at the time. I was like, what does this guy have to say? But no, he was really right. But he did that out of love because, he knows that eventually, we're going to be priests together and things. And it's just, giving good, feedback and whatnot, because we want to help each other.
Right.
We want to iron sharpens iron. We want each other to be really good priests.
Right, absolutely.
And so you do that in a spirit of, humility. But it's also about, taking and being self-aware of like, okay, is this something I hear from a lot of people? Is this something that I've seen in myself? And then, that's combined with the schooling and things. And so, human formation is not something to be scared of. It's not something that's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to be critiqued all my days. I don't want someone to judge me, whatever. No, it's just really about building each other up and developing to be the best priest and actually really just the best people we can be.
Right.
And again, it doesn't just encompass, like vices. I mean, it can even be just general things like, I'm a bigger guy. Right. And so, David, is always pushing me to work out and whatnot, and be healthy.
Yeah.
For instance, I'm a bigger guy, and you can see I got this, arm cast on. It wasn't because the sisters beat me for not being good human formation, but we actually had a kickball game recently ago. And, I was joking with David. I was like, if he'd pushed me to be healthy, I wouldn't have broken my arms. I fell, I tripped, and I landed on my arm. 265 pounds hitting one spot on your body, do not recommend. But it's things like that, and I'm sure I already got things, you get funny stories like that. So what are some good stories? Maybe mine's just depressing, I don't know. But what are some good human formation stories y'all have? Funny, interesting, exciting, whatnot. The time the sisters chased us with rulers, right?
Well, I remember going off of that, another aspect of like growing in human formation is like you said, like development of our bodies. Like our body, we're going to serve with our bodies too. And so one of the things we do every semester, every year, is we have the Archbishop's Cup, where our seminary competes in a tournament against the seminarians from Houston, and then or from the seminary in Houston. And then in the spring we have the Rector's Cup, which is like an intramural competition amongst us and the religious communities here. And I remember one year we created two teams amongst ourselves for the Rector's Cup, and we named each other's. It was like the Maccabean Madness versus the Apostolic Avengers. And so those were always like really fun, really cool opportunities for the community to come together and grow in brotherhood and grow as men, learning how to have fun, self-care, relax in healthy ways. And so I always appreciate those tournaments.
Nice. For me, it was so funny. I was out at doing pastoral ministry this last academic year, and when I met with the principal and later with the pastor of the parish, they both kind of asked me, like, do you play music? Do you, like, what else do you do? And I remember leaving those meetings thinking, oh man, I'm not enough. What other skill, whatever the talent can I acquire that will be attractive to the faithful? And in this instance, I was working in a Catholic school, so then to the students. And so I was thinking about it, and then for some reason, I don't know why or how, but I got this idea of learning to skateboard, because I thought, okay, maybe the kids would like a seminarian who skateboards. So I was...
this is going to end well.
So I was grateful enough to find another seminarian here at Assumption who was willing to learn this skill, learn to skateboard with me. I'd never skateboarded in my life, really. And so he and I both decided to take up skateboarding. So we got a skateboard, and we started skateboarding around campus down the street to Woodlawn Lake, and I I'm still trying to ollie. I'm still working on that skill. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. But that's one aspect of this human formation, right? This idea of like, how can I become a more whole person? Not that skateboarding makes me more whole, but like this idea of more than just someone who prays all day, more than someone who can just celebrate the Mass, but someone who can go out and relate to the people to where they feel comfortable with that individual. And so human formation helps us to become public people, public figures, because as we celebrate Mass or give a homily at the AMBO, the faithful are looking at you, they're watching you. And then as soon as you exit the church, they're still watching you, and they're really looking for an authentic man. And so then I think human formation for me goes, of course, beyond everything that we talked about some sort of internal formation, but even physical, being physically well and physically healthy, capable of doing the work of a minister, and knowing that there's many demands on priests of today. They're extremely busy, and I'm sure there can be stress and other things that are affecting them. And so how can we grow on that level so we can manage those stresses? What are the ways that we can relax? You mentioned that, David, through sports or through community with friends. Understanding that our human dimension is so incredibly important to our work as ministers.
Yeah, another story that's funny, and I think that captures another aspect of human formation for me is another thing we do every year is we have this multicultural day at the seminary. Just like we talked about, so many guys come from different backgrounds, different cultures, so we can all grow from encountering each other's cultures, encounter each other's different backgrounds.
Right.
And so we have this opportunity where every year, one day, we all make like a dish, or everyone who wants to makes a dish like from their culture, from their country, and we all share a meal. But this past year, we also did like a talent show with it. And so I was thinking, the guy in charge was like, nobody's signing up for the talent show. Like, I think everybody's like a little worried, and so I was like, well, I know how to juggle, so I guess I can juggle. And so I started practicing a little bit more, and I ended up juggling at the multicultural day. And then the funny thing was that my formation advisor at our next meeting, he said, I'm really glad that you did that for the talent show. I think it's because he knows my background from West Point. He's like, I sometimes I worry that you're a little too intense, and you just need to be able to relax and just show your fun side. He's like, so I'm glad you did that. Keep juggling.
That's the key thing too. Is all of these moments of human formation make us better people, make us better priests, and I think. Seminary provides us opportunities. And speaking of, like stories and people helping us, I remember, there's various priests who also live here in residence. And there was one a couple years ago, Father Buzigard, who lived here, and he's a big cigar and like Scotch and bourbon fan. And he would always, he knew I liked cigars, and a couple of us, and he would sit out on the porch with us, and he'd provide cigars. First Cuban cigar I ever had, he like somehow got some. Jesuits, I'm not saying the conspiracy is true that they rule the world, but he always could find Cuban cigars, and so we'd go out there and smoke. He would just make comments about things like, when I was in seminary, this, or I had this story, or this helped me with this, or hey, I noticed this with y'all, and he was always really like, he worked for the diocese, so he was always invited San Antonio guys, those of us who smoke. Not everyone. Smoking is not necessarily a vice. So I'm sure I'm going to get a comment on that.
Next podcast topic.
Next podcast, Robert should not smoke cigars. But it's those great moments of just, and it was just being able to share that wisdom. And I think we do that in seminary with each other, but priests also, and other people give us opportunity. And so all these kind of things, these, moments of growth, these opportunities, I should say, that's really what seminary provides, is a lot of opportunities for growth. Make us better people, and they impact our family, they impact our friends, and they impact our community, especially the ones that we're going to serve in the future. I'm reminded, for instance, my home parish is Our Lady Guadalupe in Helotes, and I give a shout out to Father Scott Janosek, who's there. He's a big hunter. He loves to hunt and fish, and he really uses his love and desire for that for his ministry. So it's cool for kids to see a priest who's not just praying every day, but is out there in his back working hard, showing those virtues of diligence, discipline, hard work, but also just generosity. I mean, he's always inviting people out, whether it's people in the community, seminarians, whatnot. And so I think we can all something simple like juggling that no one knows you can do can show your human formation, it can show your personality, your character, or it can be something big. Yeah. And so, we got a few minutes left here, but what are some like last kind of touching things about like how you think human formation, benefits the church, benefits the community, benefits yourself?
I think, I want to circle back to what you said about it's not always about people just evaluating you and criticizing you. And I think the great thing I remember about human formation is that it starts with, it doesn't start with this is what you need to fix. It's rather something that they say, what's your goals for this semester? Mm-hmm. When the new semester starts, what's your goals in each pillar of formation? And what are some things you want to grow in? So it starts with us. Like the initiative comes from us. And so I think that's really reassuring. The critiques, the feedback we're getting are more often than not just based on our own goals. Mm-hmm. And so I see it as really self-initiated and self-driven. Right. And so it's not just, you need to fit this mold, become a cookie cutter. No, it's very personalized, and it's very growing according to the man that God created me to be.
Right. And I'll add briefly here that human formation doesn't end when seminary ends, that it's ongoing, it's lifelong, and it's an invitation even for anyone listening to consider ways that they can grow in human formation in all the ways we've already talked about. But that, you said it's self-initiated oftentimes, and it's something that we can pursue until the end. In the end of our life, we always want to continue growing and becoming better humans. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think, we've really kind of touched on the basic things, and God willing, for any of you listening who enter seminary, don't be afraid of human formation. Mm-hmm. It's good. Even someone like me who's got a lot more human don't be worried about it. It's good. It actually really is something that, looking back, has been really something that's helped me the most, mm-hmm. and something that I think has helped most people the most. Even guys who end up discerning out. We just had one seminarian who left a few years ago. Now he's getting married. And I guarantee that some of the human formation he got in seminary made him better. Is going to make him a better husband, a better father.
Absolutely.
But again, it's the concept that we're human beings. We're striving to serve God and His people, and therefore, we need to realize, hey, where can I grow to be a better servant of Christ and a better servant for the people? Yeah. And so, again, don't be afraid. It's all good. It's all done in love and charity. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Like when David's out there whipping at me to run. You should see him. He's a real taskmaster. He admits, though, that he does. So again, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for listening, and we really hope that those of you who decide to enter seminary will enjoy being part of our family one day and being formed. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Moses, David.
Thanks, Robert.
Again, on behalf of the Archdiocese of San Antonio and Vocation Office, thank you so much, and God bless.